This is the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
I'm Stephen A. Welcome to the latest edition of the Stephen A. Smith Show, coming at you as I love to do every weekday over the airwaves of ESPN Radio. That's 710 ESPN LA. That's 98.7 FM New York City. And, of course, nationwide over the airwaves of ESPN Radio. Sirius XM style, Channel 80. Number to call up, as always, is 866-729-ESPN. That's 866-729-3776. Jam-packed show coming your way today. LeBron James in his press conference yesterday, not just on President Trump, but on Kyrie Irving. We'll be talking about that. Carmelo Anthony in his press conference yesterday, not just about himself and his trade from the New York Knicks to the Oklahoma City Thunder, but his pursuit of Dwayne Wade. Obviously, that's going to be null and void, because if Dwayne Wade goes anywhere other than Miami, it's going to be Cleveland, which I'm told he should be taken care of today. He'll probably end up in Cleveland. So you've got that going on, and we'll definitely touch on that. We'll also touch on additional tweets from President Trump. We'll talk about the NFL and their relationship with President Trump, or lack thereof. And we'll also get into the Dallas Cowboys and Jerry Jones kneeling before the playing of the national anthem, and then obviously standing while the anthem was being read. And, of course, the boos that descended from the rafters. And I shouldn't say rafters, but from the higher parts of the stadium, the boos descending down on the players itself. We'll talk about all of that as the show progresses today, right here on the Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio, 866-729-ESPN. That's 866-729-3776. But we'll start off with the game itself, because the Dallas Cowboys did handle their business last night, 28-17 over the Arizona Cardinals, who are surprisingly awful. The Arizona Cardinals, their offensive line is putrid. Damn it, I don't know if they could block me right now. Just awful. And as a result, Carson Palmer couldn't do some of the things you'd like for him to do, even though Larry Fitzgerald got loose. 13 receptions, 149 yards, and a TD. First game with at least 10 receptions, 100 receiving yards, and a reception TD since 2010, week 17 at the San Francisco 49ers. It's the first time, since that time. Week 17 of 2010, that Larry Fitzgerald had a game like that. You also got Carson Palmer, 2 pass TDs. Now has 100 pass touchdowns with the Cardinals. He also had 158 touchdown passes with the Bengals. So he's the fourth player in NFL history with 100 pass touchdowns for multiple teams, joining Peyton Manning, Kurt Warner, and Fran Tarkenton. And here's my response. Who gives a damn? Talk about stats being absolutely positively meaningless. The Cardinals were supposed to be better than this. They just weren't impressive. Meanwhile, the Dallas Cowboys, look at it this way, ladies and gentlemen. Would you have thought for 1 second, if I came to you and I tell you, excluding a 30-yard run in the second quarter, that Ezekiel Elliott would have 21 carries for 50 yards, would you think that the Cowboys would have won that game? If I told you Jason Witten only had 1 reception for 3 yards, would you think the Cowboys would have won that game? If I told you Des Bryant had 2 receptions for 12 yards, even though 1 was for 15 yards, a tremendous athletic effort on his part, even though he was helped by offensive lineman Travis Frederick pushing him into the end zone. If I told you he only would finish the day with 12 receptions for 2 yards, yes, that means the second reception was for minus 3 yards. If I told you that Des Bryant, that's all he was going to do, would you have picked the Dallas Cowboys to win this game? Because, ladies and gentlemen, that's where we are. Didn't have much of a running game to speak of. Didn't have much of a passing game to speak of. Dak Prescott balled. Finished with 183 yards passing, including a career-high 120 yards passing outside the pocket. I brought up Des Bryant because it was his 69th career touchdown catch in his 100th career game. 4th most by any player through his first 100 games since the merger, trailing only Jerry Rice, Randy Moss, and Rob Gronkowski. That's elite company. But we all know that Des Bryant doesn't look elite. We all know he doesn't look the same. We all know that he can't create the separation he could once create. He's still a stellar athlete. Scott Van Pelt told our very own Louis Riddick that, you know what? He's like a better, more athletic version of Anquan Bolden. Maybe that's true. Maybe that's true. But Des Bryant certainly ain't who he used to be. And I hope that he returns to the stud that he is, because I don't see him getting open too much. And when he is open on a rare occasion, it appears, I don't see them getting him the ball enough. So that's something the Dallas Cowboys are going to have to figure out. And I guess you could look at them and you could sit up there and say, we know what? They got a legitimate shot at the Super Bowl. Yeah, you could. They got all the requisite ingredients. Yeah, you could say that too. You can say all of that. I understand it. But do I think they're better than Green Bay? I do not. Do I think they're better than Atlanta? I do not. I'm not even sure if the Dallas Cowboys are the best team in the NFC East. I'm just not sure at this particular moment in time. What you want me to say? 866-729-ESPN. It's 866-729-3776. That's one story I was going to get into. The other was NCAA basketball coaches. Just as an aside, I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but it is breaking news that has taken place within the last couple of hours. 4 assistant basketball coaches from Arizona, Auburn, Oklahoma State, and the University of Southern California, USC, right here in town, in L.A., were among those arrested on federal corruption charges Tuesday after they were caught taking thousands of dollars in bribes to steer NBA-destined college stars towards certain sports agents and financial advisors, authorities said. The names: Auburn's Chuck Person, Oklahoma State's Lamont Evans, Arizona's Emmanuel Book Richardson, and USC's Tony Bland. Here's a simple question, y'all. Are we really surprised? I mean, I'm trying to figure out where's the illegality here. Personally, I mean, if you sit up there, you try to stir somebody towards them, okay, I guess there's illegality here because you're not supposed to do that. I understand. But in terms of people giving advice, in terms of people trying to steer you someplace, and in terms of money exchanging hands, I'm sorry, excuse my ignorance. I thought that was always a part of college sports. I actually did. I've never doubted that for a second. Talk about the FBI being late to the party. This has been going on for about 30 years. I mean, you want to call it breaking news? All right. I guess coaches being arrested by the FBI, okay, that's news. I'm not trying to dismiss it or poo-poo it. I'm just saying it's pretty common. I ain't gonna mention names because I don't want to get anybody in trouble. But let's just think about some of the star athletes that have played in college basketball throughout the last several decades. What the hell did you think they went to those programs for? You think? I mean, do you really think that no money ever exchanged hands? That families didn't get perks and benefits? What world are you living in? Are you kidding me? That's what this is about? I hear y'all. Damn sure wasn't surprising to me. And just for the record, because I don't want the FBI coming to knock at my door, I never witnessed no money exchanging hands. I never witnessed any illegalities. I'm just talking about word of mouth stuff you heard on the street throughout the years. When a star high school athlete ended up going to a college program, you think he went there because he loved the coach so much? That was the story. You think perks weren't allowed? You think money didn't exchange hands? I mean, come on. Just look it up. It's not uncommon. 866-729-ESPN. It's 866-729-3776. One of the things I will get into was Jerry Jones and the position that he took as it pertained to the Dallas Cowboys, ultimately kneeling, then standing, kneeling before the national anthem, then standing thereafter. What did you think about what was exercised by the Dallas Cowboys last night? Do you agree with the boos that descended upon them from the Arizona fans? And more importantly, where do you go from here after all of these protests? Lots of stuff to talk about, so little time, but we always find it right here on the Stephen A. Smith Show.
Want to be a part of the show? Hit Stephen A. up weekdays from 1 to 3 Eastern at 866-729-3776. You're listening to the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
Welcome back to the Stephen A. Smith Show. ESPN Radio, 866-729. ESPN is always the number to call up. That's 866-729-3776. If I haven't gotten to your phone calls, I have some technical difficulties trying to get our lines together. Sometimes that happens. Please forgive us. But we're trying to get it together so I can get on the calls, get on the phone with you guys and take your calls. Looking forward to doing that. But before I do, on another note, because I spent the first segment talking about the Dallas Cowboys and their performance against the Arizona Cardinals last night. Cardinals are just a bad team. Talk about the luster that has lost its shine as it pertains to Bruce Arians, the coach, Carson Palmer, the quarterback, who was a former MVP candidate a couple of years ago. And just overall, the team, they just don't look impressive. They just don't. There's no other way around it. I can't slice it any other way. And, of course, we talked about the NCAA basketball coaches among 10 charged with fraud and corruption. 4 assistant basketball coaches from Arizona, Auburn, Oklahoma State, University of California, Southern California, USC. So that's something that we'll definitely have to address as the show progresses. Tony Bland out of USC. Got the FBI on your heels. Something's wrong. It's not a good look. I'll tell you that much right now. 866-729-ESPN. It's 866-729-3776. Although I don't know what the surprise is. You know, players have been trying to funnel athletes, certain programs, or rather coaches have been trying to funnel athletes, certain programs, monies have exchanged hands and all that stuff. This is not something that's new. Just isn't. And I'll leave it at that. Let me get into what transpired last night in Arizona. Dallas Cowboys did win a game 28-17 at the University of Phoenix Stadium. But also they were booed prior to the game because the owner, Jerry Jones, along with his family, his son, Coach Jason Garrett, who might as well be his son, along with a few others, all took a knee prior to the game, prior to the playing of the national anthem, to be specific. And I got to give credit where credit is due. I really, really do. Because we need to understand something. Jerry Jones and the Dallas Cowboys taking a knee, but doing so before the national anthem was played. It was obviously something that was discussed. It was planned. It was a total team effort. And I don't see how anybody can find anything wrong with what they did. They took a knee to show unity and the willingness for all of us to come together. And then they stood for the national anthem because that's important to Jerry Jones. See, one of the things that we haven't talked about enough here is this. Everybody wants to speak up about First Amendment rights, First Amendment privileges. Read the First Amendment. That's for the public sector. It's not for private entities. The NFL is a private industry. You know, unlike the NBA, listen, the NFL strongly recommends that you stand for the national anthem. It doesn't mandate it. So not only was Colin Kaepernick's protest peaceful, it violated nothing. Didn't violate any laws. Didn't even violate any NFL bylaws. So at some point in time, you got to get into what this protest, what the venom towards these individuals protesting is absolutely about. And I got news for you. Folks in America, particularly and specifically in Arizona last night, made themselves look bad. Because if Jerry Jones, who's from Arkansas, who has publicly stated he wants and expects any player wearing his uniform to stand for the national anthem, to honor our American flag. He has been unapologetic about that, which is what I applaud him for doing because none of the other owners have done that. He has. He's been very honest about it. What it means to him and anybody who's working for him is going to represent his ideals to some capacity, particularly as it pertains to our American flag. Period. That's where he stands. And he's made it very clear. And I applaud him for his candor. And I'm sitting there thinking, well, he's exercised his right to free speech and constitution. Well, wait a minute. That's the public sector. actually to kneel for the national anthem in the National Football League, even though he didn't break any laws, you do work for Jerry Jones. And if not, and Colin Kaepernick didn't work for Jerry Jones, he worked for the 49ers. But I'm saying if you're a Cowboy, you work for Jerry Jones. And if he thinks you're in violation of him and he decides that he doesn't want you, what you gonna say? Something worth considering. But to get back to those people who were booing, since the Cowboys handled this so brilliantly, and they deserve all the credit in the world for it, now you got a whole bunch of Americans looking very, very bad today. Because what exactly are you booing? If they stood for the national anthem, but they only took a knee to show solidarity and unity in a quest to eradicate the things that ail us as a society, as an American society, how could you boo that? What does that say about you? You know what it says? That it ain't about the national anthem. It ain't about kneeling during the national anthem. It's about America's discomfort with minorities in this world, in this country, highlighting the transgressions, racism, prejudice, bigotry, inequality. You have a problem with that. That's what it says about those who were booing yesterday. Last night, to be specific. And if there was ever a bad look in this whole fiasco of protesting and beyond, this is the moment. Jerry Jones didn't give you any reason to boo. The Cowboys gave you no reason to boo last night. They kneeled before the national anthem. They stood up when the national anthem was being played. Now, maybe you didn't know they were going to stand up for the national anthem, which is why you booed. But that could be your only rationale for booing beforehand. It could be your only rationale.
Guess what? You're in the middle of the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast. Damn it, I mean it!
So many ways to go to this subject of patriotism, the American flag, the NFL. But, you got to keep in mind it was something that I had revealed last year, and I brought it up again yesterday and today on First Take. Got to remember that prior to 2009, players in the NFL weren't even required to come out of the locker room for the national anthem. They weren't even required. People forget that. In 2009, essentially, players started coming out of their locker room for the national anthem because it was seen as a marketing strategy to make the athletes look more patriotic. These are facts. These are facts that the NFL isn't about to admit. These are facts the NFL isn't about to talk about, but it's the truth. And sometime last month, some guy from Comcast Sportsnet in New England even reported on it. Reading from some article here, it says a tribute to the NFL's ability to drape itself in a flag that nobody even realizes that prior to 2009, players being on the field for the national anthem wasn't even standard practice. I think it's written by somebody, what's his name, Nate Shaughnessy or whatever it is. I saw him in Google alerts or whatever. He calls First Take a dumpster fire of a show. Well, thank you very, very much. I'm so touched. I didn't even know who the hell you were until I just read this. My show's doing quite well. But neither here nor there. I wish him nothing but the best. God bless him. But it says here in the article, the following 5 to 6 years after the switch, the Department of Defense and National Guard both dumped a few $1 million into the NFL for added patriotic displays in a supposed effort to up recruiting numbers. In other words, it's paid patriotism. Now, that doesn't mean it's applicable to all the players because, as all of us have discussed over the last 24 hours, Alejandro Villanueva, a member of the Pittsburgh Steelers, left tackle, was also a former Army Ranger and Afghanistan vet. He stood in the tunnel. He didn't mean to be standing in the tunnel by himself, wanted to be with his teammates, but he was out there with his hand held to his heart. He served 3 tours. In Iraq, Afghanistan, there's nothing to question. I don't even know why the hell he apologized for being out there alone. He thought that he was with his teammates. He didn't know that they weren't behind him. And it looked like he was standing alone, separate and apart from his teammates, which he was apologizing for because he didn't mean to make them look bad. He didn't mean to make Coach Tomlin look bad. He didn't make anybody look bad. And they didn't make him look bad. Alejandro doesn't owe an apology. He didn't owe an apology to anybody. None of us. If there's one person in the National Football League that should not have had to apologize for a damn thing, it's him. 3 tours? 3? An Army Ranger? An Afghanistan vet? What the hell you apologizing to any of us for? We should be apologizing to you. For even making you you're remotely a sour subject in somebody's eyes, considering your service to this nation. And on behalf of everybody here associated with this network, whether they want to or not, Alejandro Villanueva, we owe you an apology. You're the one we owe an apology to. You don't owe us anything. But back to our president. President Trump. This man is something else. That much I will tell you. Oh, my goodness. Sometime like 3 in the morning or something like that. I don't know whether it's 3 or 6 in the morning, whatever the hell it was. His first tweet. Huh? Ratings for NFL football are way down except before game starts, when people tune in to see whether or not our country will be disrespected. That was his first tweet. An hour later, it's like 6 in the morning, y'all. It's like 6 in the morning. An hour later, the booing at the NFL football game last night when the entire Dallas team dropped to its knees was loudest I have ever heard. Great anger. That's a lie. I'm quite sure he's heard louder boos. Stop it. He continues. Same time. But while Dallas dropped to his knees as a team, they all stood up for our national anthem. Big progress being made. We all love our country. And then 2 hours later, approximately 8 a.m., the NFL has all sorts of rules and regulations. The only way out for them is to set a rule that you can't kneel during our national anthem. Fair enough. President's entitled to his opinion. Not an impeachable offense. Here's the problem. At some point in time, our president needs to be honest about what he really feels. And stop trying to come across like he's being real and honest. In the 1980s, I think it was 1983, Donald Trump owned the New Jersey Generals of the USFL. A couple of years later, his mission was clear. Convince the USFL, the other USFL owners, team owners, to sue the NFL in an antitrust lawsuit. By doing that, he convinced them that we'd get the millions. Because remember, USFL games were played in the spring. It was Donald Trump who convinced them to go up against the NFL and try to have games in the fall. He signed Herschel Walker. He signed Doug Flutie. Not him per se, but the USFL. And I believe it was his team, but I don't remember correctly. The point is they were in the USFL. And ultimately he pursued Lawrence Taylor, but Lawrence Taylor wasn't leaving the Giants. The point that I'm trying to make to you is he wanted to compete against the NFL. It turned out to be an unmitigated disaster. And even though they would win the antitrust lawsuit, they won a grand total of $1 when he was promising the owners billions. Because the belief was that the NFL wouldn't be able to deal with the pressure, the negative publicity, and beyond. And as a result, they would capitulate to merging the NFL with the USFL. And as a result, they would all get gobs and gobs of money. But it failed. Fast forward to the year 2014, where I was on the phone at that particular moment in time with Donald Trump talking to him about possibly owning the Buffalo Bills. and I'm going to emphasize this, any kind of comments that I may have of a negative variety towards Donald Trump is based strictly on his behavior since he has been campaigning and since he has become the president of the United States. In all the times that I've met and talked to Donald Trump in the past, I never had a word. I never had an issue with him. He was kind. He was personable. There was good conversation. He was knowledgeable about the world of sports. Had no issues with him. None whatsoever. Didn't know about the Central Park individuals. Didn't know about the lawsuits for racial discrimination in the early 70s. But I knew him as a sports dude. Somebody who knew his sports. Somebody who used to have Mike Tyson fights in Atlantic City. Somebody who aspired to own an NFL team. In this case, it was the Buffalo Bills. He was willing to pay $1 billion. Somebody else came with 1.5. Foiled again. This is the same Donald Trump that goes after Steph Curry. This is the same Donald Trump that had the CEO for Merck on his economic council and then chided him when he decided to depart after he didn't like the way that Donald Trump handled the whole Charlottesville riots. So if this man is willing to go after folks like that, what is he willing to do to NFL owners who prevented him from becoming a part of that good old boys club? Now, not all of them, because some of them are his friends, like he said. Had 8 different dudes donate $1 million to him. Robert Kraft, the owner for the New England Patriots, who I love and revere personally, does not approve of the way Donald Trump behaves, but that is his friend. The same president of the United States that we're looking at today is the same man that will call him every single week for a full year after Mr. Kraft lost his wife. And that resonates with him, and it never will stop. And I can respect that on a very, very personal level. Anybody who is that kind to me, and the only thing that I have that can relate to it is losing my mom, who I miss every minute of every day. I can't even say enough. I can't even say enough about all of y'all in the media. All of y'all in the public. Stephen A. Smith, loudmouth, speaks his mind, talks that talk, walks the walk, whatever the case may be. I'm the object of vitriol and beyond. I mean, just pick the websites. I usually never mention them because I don't pay too much attention to all of that stuff. But awful announcing and Bleacher and Deadspin and Lord knows what else. I cannot emphasize enough how kind and how decent everyone was to me when my mom passed away. And I can tell you something right now, you never forget it. Folks can come at me with fire and brimstone every day. I'll never forget the kindness. I went to Cleveland and then Oakland thereafter. And I cannot tell y'all how many people, fans, NBA officials, players, coaches, commentators, either reached out personally via phone or came up to me personally. Reverend Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton, Dr. Michael Eric Dyson, my boys over there, even at Fox, another network, from Skip to Chris Broussard to Chris Carter to Shannon Sharp and so many others. The love and respect, it will never be forgotten. I can relate to what Mr. Kraft feels about President Trump in certain respects in regards to Trump being there for him when he lost his wife. I can understand it. But you would think that Mr. Trump, knowing that he has those friends, would exercise a level of decency and avoid throwing them under the bus just because of his own individual petulance. That is not what he has done. And therein lies the problem. Because even now, don't think that he just wants to spout out about the NFL. Not only is it a distractive and evasive measure to take our attention away from health care and immigration reform and the wall that Mexico is supposed to pay for and the crisis that is North Korea. Never mind the fact that it's a distraction from all of that. Potentially, it's also payback for an NFL community that clearly has never embraced him. Think about that. Think about that.
Give Stephen A. piece of your mind.
He is sorry.
Call him weekdays from 1 till 3 Eastern.
I mean, just trash.
At 866-729-3776. Guess what? You're in the middle of the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast. Damn it, I mean it.
To the phones we go right here on the Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio. Don't you worry about it. I'll get into Charles Barkley's comments about players not going to the White House, setting a bad precedent a little bit later on the show, plus the Melo trade and how I think it ascends Oklahoma City to being the number one threat to the Golden State Warriors. I'll explain a little bit later on in the show. For now, let's get to the calls. Bill in L.A., you're live with Stephen A. Talk to me.
Stephen A.
How are you? Go ahead.
First of all, much props to you. I think I got a solution. Now that we know that America is confused about what we're protesting, maybe we could wear a logo on the jerseys that say equality for all, since the owners have no problem with a peaceful protest.
I understand that. I just don't think logos do much.
Well, it'll do much more than the confusion that we're having now.
Well, we're not confused. People just don't want to embrace it. People don't want to have a conversation about it. The logo let folks off the hook. They don't want a reason or a rationale to talk about these things. That's what the objective is. They don't want to talk about it.
At least it'll be a
it doesn't hurt.
Situation where I called attention to it in the proper way.
Okay, I got you, but let me say this to you. I don't think for 1 second that it hurts. I just don't think it'll help as much as you think it will. But I appreciate the call. I got to run. Thank you. Let's go to Jay in Cali. You're live with Stephen A. What's up, Jay?
It's Stephen A. How you doing today? I just want to say, first of all, I mean, this is no disrespect towards any minorities or anybody who's kneeling, but I think it's time to stop kneeling because it has become about who's kneeling and who's not. I think that when you have powerful leaders like, well, I don't want to call them leaders, let's just say sports leaders like LeBron James, when you have powerful people like Steph Curry, when you have Greg Popovich, when you have when you have Sherman for the Seattle Seahawks, I think that these people could get together and put something together to press the congressmen, to press the senators, governors. I might be wrong about what I'm stating, but I think that is getting lost with the kneel. And I think that if our troops can go fight for our country, come home, and not get the respect from the government that they deserve, but when that anthem comes on, when that flag is uplifted, and they stop everything they're doing, I think that that's an injustice, the same as blacks being with police brutality and things like that. I think that, and if you ask me, I don't think you can compare police brutality with troops not being taken care of when they come home. But when them troops come home, they still salute that flag. They still put their hand on their heart. They do everything they could. I think the kneeling is becoming who's kneeling, who's not.
Well. You're probably right. But what I would say to you is that the storylines, even though it's about who's kneeling and who's not, primarily the storylines have, diverted to the president. And what the president, the issue that the president has brought up, just over the whole issue of kneeling, because now it's not about Colin Kaepernick kneeling. Even when you see guys kneeling now, that's not even a story. It's who's speaking out against it or who's speaking on behalf of it. So I don't think that's any longer that big of an issue, Jay. I appreciate your call. I really don't think it's that long. That portion of it all right now is not the issue. I think now it's become about, who's complaining about it. And what's the motive behind it? That's what I think is going on right now. We'll get into the Melo trade up next. Dwayne Wade appears to be heading to Cleveland. We'll be talking about that. And we'll continue to be talking about these players these protests and the president. More of the Stephen A. Smith Show. Hour number 2 up next.
That's just a sample of what you'll hear on the Stephen A. Smith Show. Weekdays at 1 p.m. Eastern on Sirius XM Channel 80 and the ESPN app.